So Murray, I think you and I are sounding pretty good.
I'm learning your cadence pretty good.
I'm doing it 3 words at a time. You know, that's
That works.
yeah. It does. Okay, I'm going to take a roll now. Councilor Waldman,
Here.
Councilor Murray,
Here.
Councilor Burkett,
Here.
Councilor Lucero,
Here.
Councilor Knight,
Here.
Councilor Parker.
Here.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second. Second.
All right. All in favor? Say
Aye.
aye. Opposed? I don't hear anybody, so the agenda is approved. We're going to move. We've got a couple of really nice presentations tonight, and I'm looking out at your faces and I see so many of our wonderful commission and board members. The first board that's going to present tonight is the Corrales Equestrian Advisory Board. Aaron, who's going to present on their behalf?
I believe Janet was going to present. Janet,
Okay.
I saw you were still connecting to audio. Are you there now?
Yes, I am.
Great. Then
Sorry
I will,
about that.
not a
That's
problem.
okay.
Let me share my screen and you can get started here.
Oh, I'm on. I thought I was going to be on boards and commissions.
Nope, you're on.
I'm on. Okay. Let me
Start
get my notes
dancing.
here. Okay, I'm Janet Blair, and I am co-chair of the Corrales Equestrian Advisory Commission. Mayor, councilors, Administrator Curry, thank you very much for the time. I'm going to be as fast as I can here. Next slide. We have a very serious problem here in Corrales with the increase in traffic that we are seeing with the coming months. Every day, pedestrians, equestrians, and bicyclists take their lives in their hands in an attempt to cross Corrales Road. Warmer weather is going to bring more folks to enjoy the trails and the bosque, and this increasing traffic makes Corrales Road a very dangerous place to cross. Next slide. We have 3 main priority crossings. The first is Cabazon at the end of the southern end of Corrales Road. Next slide. The Jones Road Recreation Area. Continual crossings here. Again, this is a very high traffic area for pedestrians, equestrians, and bicyclists and motorists. Next slide. Our third priority is Romero Road, which is sort of like a double crossing on a curve, which means line of sight is not very good. Our other high priority sites are Via Oriata and Dixon Road. These are all very dangerous areas for bicyclists, equestrians, and pedestrians. Next slide, please. Okay, Aaron, if you could trigger the video on this. Crossers can wait 5 to 10 vehicles, sometimes even more, to get across the road. This is Patty Carroll trying to cross. And you can see the traffic is lining up here. Most alarmingly, we have found that both police and sheriff's vehicles ignore these crosswalks also and do not allow for pedestrians, equestrians, or bicyclists to cross who might be waiting. We've had some folks say that up to 25 vehicles will pass before they can get across. This is just very dangerous. Next slide, please. Another point, when we do get traffic to obey, we are often witness to almost rear end collisions because many of the drivers don't expect a crossing or who are not paying any attention to what's going on. We feel that flashing crossing signs would solve this problem too. And this is a picture of the solar powered push button crossing at the Cottonwood Montessori School. This looks like it would be the best solution to this problem. Next slide, please. This is a minimum cost estimate for 30-inch equestrian crossing signs. We got this about a year ago. I apologize that it wasn't updated, but it gives you an idea of what we are looking at in terms of costs for the 3 different roadways. We think this is a pretty minimal investment given the increase in safety that we would see. This would be a fine best used option as an investment in village safety. If you approve of this, the Corrales Equestrian Advisory Commission would be very happy to help you in the selection of these signs. We might want to go with some more push buttons to make them high enough so that equestrians would not have to get off their animals in order to push the button and then clamber back up again. So there may be additional costs for button upgrades. Next, please. Okay, this is a big problem. I think that one of the reasons we see in a lot of almost rear-end collisions is that nobody can find the damn crossing stripes. You can see that due to, and I don't believe the village is responsible for the striping on the roads, but DOT has not maintained these stripes, and they are very minimally visible. We would certainly hope that we could see additional painting and additional striping. If we can't get the solar powered signs, perhaps the village could move ahead with crosswalk stripe painting. That would be very helpful. Next slide. We could use additional signage for all 3, pedestrians, equestrians, and the bicyclists at these particular crossing points. A lot of people aren't expecting horses to pop out of the woods, or bicyclists or pedestrians. The village, we would urge the village to make improvements in the signage at these major crossing points. And the last slide, please. We can't emphasize enough that crossing signs would be an excellent investment in public safety in our village. It could also function potentially as a traffic calming mechanism with some police enforcement, as it is in the town of Bernalillo, right in front of the Range Cafe. You can't go motoring through there without being aware that that crossing sign is there. And we believe it would have a traffic calming effect, which would benefit public safety in the village also. We are hoping that we could see the village move with some capital improvement money, or perhaps with DOT capital improvement money to help us with this investment in public safety. We're the horse capital of New Mexico, and as such, we want to ensure that equestrians, pedestrians, and bicyclists are protected as they try to cross and enjoy the trails that we have in the Bosque and on the east side of the river. We would really emphasize and encourage you to move ahead with some plans to install these flashing signs, the solar powered signs, and or do additional signage and stripe painting, if at all possible. We understand that this is a DOT responsibility, but we would truly encourage the village to continue its efforts to improve these areas. I will stand for any questions you might have. And I believe that one other member of our group, Patty Carroll, is ready to speak on this also. And Chris Allen from the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission also. Ladies?
Thank you, Janet. I'll go ahead. I'm Patty Carroll. I co-chair the Corrales Equestrian Advisory Commission with Janet. And thank you, Janet, for that great presentation. I want to speak mostly to the Cabazon Road crossing. They're all very urgent, but this is the one that I use the most on horseback. And it's can be a very terrifying place to cross. And it's the most convenient for me to get across to go east to the Bosque and the Alameda area. If you're familiar with that crossing area, first of all, it's a very narrow spot for a person and a horse to wait at that crossing. And so the traffic is whizzing by and people don't stop. I spoke to my husband about that because he's not an equestrian. And I said, just from a non-equestrian standpoint, go over there with me and look at this crossing and drive up to it and see what you would do. And so we went over there, and first he said, this isn't a crossing area. There's no white stripes. And I said, but there's these big signs that show horses and pedestrians. He said, yeah, but I would never notice that. I would be looking for the white stripes. That marks that it's an official crossing, and there is none. And so then we parked and stood on foot waiting for people to stop and let us. And no one, we were probably there for 10 minutes. There were gaps in traffic where, had we been wanting to cross, we could have zipped across, but not one person stopped for us in either from the east side or the west side while we stood in the crossing waiting for someone to let us cross. So it's very evident to me that, first of all, people aren't aware that they're supposed to stop. And second, that it could be quite dangerous because people are coming in there really quickly around entering into the village. Thank you.
I might add also that in order to guarantee a crossing, one of my horses, luckily, I was able to train, and I could get her to do a rearing up. She would go up about 2 or 3 feet, and that would terrify the traffic, because there I'd be on the side of the road with this horse that looked like it was about to bolt. And luckily, you know, I never had to, well, it was just the only way that I could warn traffic that there was a crossing that was, you know, being requested, so to speak, is to have this horse look like she was misbehaving. And that was the only way I could get drivers' attention. I see Chris Allen is on here from Bicycle Pedestrian. Chris, can you add anything, please?
Aaron, is this appropriate? Aaron had me listed under Corrales Forum, but since I'm here, I will just say I am co-chair of the Corrales Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission. So I represent the second and third leg of the 3 major user groups of our recreational trails in the village. And our commission has discussed this proposal and we support it 100%. Thank you.
Right. Ron, Ron, did you want to add something here?
If Janet's done, I'll stand by until.
No, we are done. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy. Otherwise, I yield to Mr. Curry.
Thank you. And I really, with the village, really appreciate your comments because they've been very helpful in providing the energy that we need to deal with the state on some of these issues. And I'm not trying to just, bash the state because it's easy to do. What we've tried to explain to them that there's definitely a bifurcation of between the issue of, say, Main Street that they always hear from us about and the pathway, and talking about these crossings. These crossings are so important, as you've so identified tonight, about the general safety of Corrales, whether we have the road or whatever. These are an issue that's right now. And so between the mayor's efforts and the efforts that we've tried to make in our last meeting, which was last week, we have emphasized as strongly as we can some of the points that you've just brought up tonight, that safety is our biggest concern. And the state has lots of reasons for not doing things in a timely manner, but what they have committed to us is that they have the paperwork from us now as far as the maps and the needs on the crossings. And I believe they are convinced that we are capable of doing the work so that we're in compliance with state regulations, so that we could go ahead and do it rather than waiting for them to kind of get in the queue to do it for us. So, but this is a live issue, obviously, and we're not waiting. When we have meetings with them every 2 months, and like I said, we had our last meeting with them last week. We're scheduled to have another meeting with them in the next 2 months, but we'll be communicating with them very vigorously between now and then about this issue, because this is an obvious issue that we have to address, regardless of anything else, whether Corrales Road remains, under the state's jurisdiction or our jurisdiction or whatever happens there. This is a now issue, and we're going to continue to do it. And your statements tonight, we will use to continue to persuade the state that we can make these crossings right now that the weather is warm, which has been the issue in the past 8 months, is it was wintertime and you couldn't possibly lay down those crossings to do that. But we're prepared to do that, and your response and your support for this is increasingly important.
Would it be appropriate? Would it be all right with your committee if we forwarded your presentation to the person responsible for the crossings at DOT?
Please do. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your efforts, and we would be happy to send any other information that might be helpful. But
Perhaps her
please do
home
send
phone
them.
number, maybe her home phone number would be good. I'm sort of kidding, but it is very frustrating when it keeps being the number one thing you're talking about. And, so believe me, we are so with you on this, and we're going to get it done one way or another. Either they're going to put us on their calendar in the spring, summer, or we're going to do these ourselves according to their specifications. And that's what they told us we could do. Councilor Tyson,
Thank you.
Tyson Parker.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, just a question with regarding to the crosswalks. I've seen them with the lights kind of embedded in the asphalt through a depression. Is that something that would be a hazard for people riding horses, injuries and stuff like that? Do you know? Anybody?
I don't believe it would, but I think we would be better served to have the pole mounted crossing signs with the push buttons that the riders could simply tap into to trigger the lights.
No,
That would be the most optimal of the installations. Thank you.
right. It would be in addition to that, and it's one thing having lights flashing up to the side, but when you have lights in the road flashing, it's one more step of attention for people. So I'm just curious if that would be an issue or not.
Hey, we will take them. We feel like this is an accident waiting to happen, And, you know, we're the horse capital of New Mexico. We just don't want any issues occurring that would any kind of accidents between motor vehicles, pedestrians, equestrians, or bicyclists. We just feel like this is a really urgent public safety question for the village. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Absolutely. Are there any more questions from any of the counselors for members of the equestrian? Yes, Counselor Burkett. I'm sorry, Counselor Murray, I'll get right to you.
So hypothetically, if we can't get a meeting with the state in a timely manner, are we precluded from just taking this into our own hands and putting some paint on the streets and buying crosswalks and putting them up? What are the potential ramifications of us handling it ourselves?
Mayor, let me answer that. You know, that's probably a good suggestion, and we'll just let it stand at that. You know, I'm not, and Counselor Burkett, I'm not trying to be cute, but I'm just trying to say is that we understand the importance of these issues. And I believe that we have enough communication trust with the state that if push comes to shove, I think the village wants to do what's best for the safety of the village. And so I know the mayor and all of us have been pretty persistent in this issue. And I believe we've communicated the seriousness of this to the state. And if we have to get to a point where we are ready to take that position, I think we're there, but I don't think we're going to have to go there.
Counselor Murray?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
And then Counselor Waldman.
My only comment would be that if we do proceed with this and we put the pole lights in, let's make sure we get them far enough off the road so that if DOT ever comes around to fixing Corrales Road and putting it up to spec, we've got sufficient width in there so that we can take care of the bicycle lanes and everything else that may be involved in that improvement. But I support this wholeheartedly. I think that much needed. And I would support paying for the lights ourselves if we have to.
Counselor Waldman?
Yes, Janet, first of all, thank you very much for a really excellent presentation. I'm really in support. You said this cost estimate was about a year old. And so I was wondering if you might have a guesstimate as to how much more it might be. And also the additional cost for the button upgrades, how much that might be, what we're looking at for total cost.
I do not have my information at hand,
Okay.
but we could certainly do some research on behalf of the village and come back. I believe the button upgrades are approximately $100 a piece, and I don't know if that's per pole or not. Okay. But we could provide the village with some additional information. CEAC would be happy to do the legwork on that.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, yes, Councilor Lucero.
I'll just make this real quick. I'm kind of wondering, and probably Ms. Blair, I'll probably direct this question to you. Along with the signs itself, because it's been my experience that I imagine 8 out of 10 drivers actually don't know you have to stop at a crosswalk. And would there be any signage possible, kind of educating drivers that there are crosswalks coming up to heed those crosswalks, from fear of actually getting too much signage, but educating drivers that there are crosswalks coming up and you must stop. I have seen them before. It's been my history. It's been my experience that a lot of drivers might not know that they got to stop at those crosswalks. Is there signage to that effect?
I believe there is one area in the village, and I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly where it is, but it has a picture of a horse, and it says horse crossing ahead. And that might be the best we could do, other than a little bit of public relations or public information education that we might want to put out on Facebook, in the Corrales comment, that we are getting improved crossings. We'd be very happy to assist the village in any way possible with that effort.
Well, I know the village used to have crosswalk safety days. Do you remember those? So we could certainly do an education rollout along with this to try to get driver etiquette kind of down to speed, I guess is what I'd like to say. And we could work together.
Yes, it would be very helpful if the Corrales Police Department might assist us in that. We did do crosswalk education. We could certainly do that again and have riders going back and forth. And if we had a police car there, that would even emphasize the crosswalk safety requirement even more. We'd be very happy to pursue that with Corrales Police Department.
Chief, I know you're here. Would you like to make a comment?
I'm sure we could accommodate that request, Mayor and Council.
Okay, we'll work on it then. Thank you. Takes a village, right? We'll get this done. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. And we will, please keep us in your thoughts and prayers as we continue to strive to get these crosswalks done in a very timely manner. So thank you we will continue. We will not give up on this issue.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Next is the Parks and Recreation Commission. They're going to give us a presentation on the history of Salse Park.
Hello and good evening. Thanks for having me, Mayor Roque and councilors. It's good to see everybody I see a lot of familiar faces. It's good to see you again. You're looking good. I've been asked to give a short presentation on Salse Park and kind of its history. So I'm going to get started with that. So I would say that there's been 3 historic hurdles when considering Salse Park, and that's been flooding, community consensus, and money. Where are we going to get the money? So Salse Park was given to the village of Corrales over 30 years ago. And in return, the Sagebrush subdivision, where it's located, the developer was allowed to build houses on smaller, less than 1 acre lots. Since its inception, Salse Park has experienced multiple flooding occurrences, most notably in July of 1990, very soon after the park was erected, when arroyos overflowed due to flash flooding, covering the grass field at Salse Park that had been recently installed and by the developer, as well as in August 2006, when runoff from Rio Rancho caused the Harvey Jones Channel to fill with silt. And most recently, July of 2013, when the Skafka Arroyo filled. So back in 2008, the Parks and Rec Commission created a tentative plan for improving Salse Park. The plan did not receive much traction at the time, however, due to lack of community consensus on what the park should consist of, and more critically, money. So just to go back a second. So after the initial flooding in 1990, after the subdivision had been completed, there was essentially no park to be had at that point. The field that had been placed was covered with silt. And so, okay, but anyways, moving forward again. And so there was lack of consensus on what the park should consist of, and more critically, money. In 2009, SCAFCA, the Southern Sandoval County Arroyo Flood Control Authority, created a landscape plan as well for the property. But again, lack of design consensus and who should be financially responsible for its implementation blocked progress forward. These discussions continued into 2012 and perhaps further. By 2015, after the 2013 flooding of the property, the village of Corrales applied for FEMA money. The good news is, as everybody knows, I hope, is that the FEMA's multi-million-dollar Salse Basin flood mitigation project has recently been completed. However, Salse Park still faces issues of community consensus and where the money's going to come from to further improve the area. So more recently, the Parks and Rec Commission has recommended, so that the village may know all of its viable options for the property, that the village determine if the village has legal authority to sell or trade the Salsay property, the south side right now, for another property within the village. While the commission's not making a recommendation at this time that the village sell or trade the property per se, the commission does believe that knowing the answer to its sellability or tradability will allow for the most informed decisions moving forward regarding the future of the property. If the property could be swapped for another property within the village or sold outright, it may be worth considering, because we might be able to acquire land in a more desirable location, or the proceeds of the sale could go toward improving other village properties. So I'm not sure if how many of the village councilors or the mayor have been able to go to the property recently since the improvements have been made, but I highly recommend that you do so when you can, if you haven't. It is definitely a different landscape now. I can imagine, although I haven't spoken to residents in the area directly, that there must be a universal sigh of relief that there are these mitigation, that the flood mitigation has occurred. And with the size of that ponding area, I would feel pretty safe and secure at this point. So the north side ponding area, there has been interest in the past for making it into a dog park. But again, the reaction to this idea has been mixed. But a dog park could be carried out and completed mostly in-house. In other words, Lynn and the village staff, without substantial outside fundings being an issue, because it already is essentially fenced at this time with the chain link fence. However, there would need to be safety considerations, such as additional fencing within the existing chain link fence area, because it's just too large and may cause difficulty in controlling dogs. And then of course there would need to be dog way stations, the obvious things needed. And then also the 5-foot diameter drainage outlet at the west end of the pond would need to be altered to prevent coyotes and other wildlife access to the dog park area, as well as prevent dogs from entering it. And then just on a side note, the fire department has also in the past shown interest in installing an in-ground water tank at the east end of that ponding area. So for the south side park possibilities, obviously the first thing to do would be remove the asphalt milling pile as soon as possible that exists on that south side. And this should be completed, it's my understanding, by the end of summer, because the Albuquerque Asphalt Company is scheduled to put in the bike path in June. So hopefully by the end of the summer, the millings would be placed as well after that project is complete. But after that, one of the recommendations to consider from the Parks and Rec Commission is to obviously grade the area. And these are all things that would be at low cost, where the community could enjoy the property sooner versus later. But to grade the area, create a perimeter pathway, like a 6-foot wide perimeter and pressure fine, which is about $40 per ton, repair the existing well, install water lines. And then that could also be done in-house at most likely a cost of $30,000 to $35,000. When I say in-house, I mean Lynn and village employees. And then also, we did do a survey in 2018. The Parks and Rec did a survey, and it was addressed in that survey. There was 2 questions on Salsay Park, and one of them was asking residents what they would want to see once flood mitigation had occurred. And the top 3 choices selected off the list were a jogging, walking path, picnic tables, and a native grass lawn area. Now, a native grass lawn area could most likely be installed at this point. However, we wouldn't be able to do like a standard grass field or something that needs high water because we don't necessarily have the water rights right now to do that unless we were to buy them. And plus it would probably be more aesthetically pleasing probably to have some xeriscaping anyways and to save water. And then we could also delineate different areas for different uses. This is about a 2-acre property that I'm talking about on the south side of the south side property. There could be shade, overhang with benches, picnic benches or chairs, a swing set, dog waste station, demonstration, xeriscape, garden areas, a fitness area cluster, artificial boulders for climbing. But all these items could be added gradually. It wouldn't need to all be done at once. We could just start with a path and some native grass to start with, so someone could look out their window and see something alive and welcoming. And then this is just on a personal side note, I'm not sure if this ship has sailed or not, but just talking about money again. I know that at one point, I think back in 2012, when SCAFCA was involved and they had done a design for the property, a potential park design, there was questions about possible SCAFCA monies being involved in putting into the park rehabilitation. So I don't know if it might be worth pursuing to see if they should or would help pay for any improvements the village decides upon. And with that, I'll answer any questions as I can and also say hello to Jeannie, who I see is here, and Ed Cole, who's also on the commission. And I may not be able to see everybody that's actually here, so I apologize if someone else is here that I'm not acknowledging.
Thank you so much, Renee. Are there questions? Obviously, this issue has a pretty long beard, and I think it's been a little frustrating. I want to commend the Parks and Rec Commission for trying so many different options. Councilor Waldman, I know this is in your district. Do you have some questions for Renee?
Yeah, I first of all very much appreciate the history and all the issues that have been raised in the past. One of the questions I had, you pretty much answered, and that was what ideas did people have that did not reach consensus in years past? I've heard perhaps a soccer field and some other dog park, but are there other suggestions that were made over the years? I'm sure there are hundreds, but I think what you outlined at the end makes an awful lot of sense. It's a low cost, visually pleasing, and I think could appeal to a wide range of age groups, and I think that's important. So, but are there other ideas, other suggestions that were made over the years which you could not reach consensus?
Well, let me see if I can get it easily up here for you, just coming off the top of my head. So these were some of the options that were mentioned on the survey that I can tell you right off: a riding arena, tennis courts, playground, exercise stations, native grass lawn area, demonstration gardens, picnic tables, jogging, walking path, veterans monument, tennis courts, flying disc golf course, dog park, BMX course, and other. And so BMX was definitely not any interest to anybody. I know in the past, but just for the history of the area, I would like it known that children did make that into a BMX riding area for quite some time. So they created what they didn't have. They saw the possibility and they made it a reality. Lighting is not very popular. Bathrooms.
Sorry.
Anything like games, tournaments, which would bring additional people to the area. And to be honest, I don't know if the property could support a large number of people utilizing it all at once, just because of the limited parking available there.
And some of these issues that were raised already now exist in the village, with the tennis courts, or you know, some of the other issues you raised. I like the idea of having a peaceful area with shade, with some picnic tables, perhaps adding your exercise stops on your perimeter, jogging, crush your fine path would be a good idea. Some benches and shade. Anywhere you can get shade is always welcome. So great. Thank you very much for doing this. Thank you, Mayor.
Certainly, certainly. Thank you so much. Do I have other questions for yes, Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the only question I would have is, since the renovations, is there any chance of flooding of that particular park would get these improvements made?
And is that question for me? Because that's way past my knowledge.
I see Tanya. I bet you Tanya has something she can say to this. We hope not, after putting all that money in, but yes. Tanya, would you like to address that issue?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. No man-made structure has ever stopped Mother Nature. We're hoping it's going to really help with the flooding there. The big pond is designed to flood over into the small pond on the south side if it fills up. I don't remember how many acre feet it holds. We are really hoping that it will work, but Mother Nature has always won at some point or another. If it makes it 100 years and I'm no longer alive, that would be great. We also haven't had a good rainstorm since we put it in, just to test the flows. So I'm really confident in the project, and we spent $2.5 million, not including the purchase of Noah's Acres. So yeah, could it flood again? Of course, but I'm hoping it won't.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a quick? Yes, I see your hand, Councilor Parker.
Counselor, you're muted.
That was such a beautiful introduction I just gave. I'm sorry that you guys weren't able to hear that. Mayor Roque, councilors, Renee, nice to see you, by the way.
Good to see you.
It seems like it's not a matter of if it's going to flood, but when it's going to flood. And although a lot of mitigation has been put into place, it seems our weather patterns now are not normal. And so whatever you guys choose to do with that area, it makes sense to me that it's done with the intent of when it floods, it's easily turned back into what you intended it to be. And Jeannie, nice to see you too. Sorry I didn't say hello. That's it.
All right, well, at this point, perhaps we can canoodle with Councilor Waldman, maybe can work with the Parks and Rec people to see what kind of, maybe it sort of sounds like the native grasslands and that, you know, something that's really, we're not putting a lot of infrastructure in there that could be destroyed, but might be a better opportunity for the community. And then I think the answer for the sale or transfer, we would have to put you together with our attorney, Mr. Audio, for his ideas on that, which probably isn't tonight, but I know it's been a struggle. So I appreciate your hanging in there with the project. Thank you.
And Mayor, is it okay to ask if Jeannie or Ed have anything to add that I may have failed to mention?
Of course.
Do either one of you, Ed or Jeannie?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jeannie Reed, Mayor and councilors. Thanks for having us here. I have quite a bit of history with Salsa Park, as my house, my former house, backed right up to where that lovely retention pond has now been put in. So that was actually, that part of the park was my backyard. And this Salsa Park project in one form or another has been discussed for at least 20 years that I'm aware of since I've been here. And so, Yes, as Renee alluded to, there have been many variations and things that we have tried to propose, and for one reason or another, they were not able to get traction. And the emphasis has always been to create, yes, it's in a neighborhood, just more of a neighborhood feel to it. It's not an inner city park that we were looking to improve or have a mass transit, you know, people coming in. I think now because that north side has been developed as such, we do have limited parking. Prior to that, when we had talked about potentially having extra fields for soccer practice, we were talking about just having the itty bitties on it, you know, so we could have multiple goals and layout, and it was no lighting. That was always a big concern. Bringing lots of people into the neighborhood, that seemed to be a big concern. We did try to mitigate all of that by giving additional ideas and thoughts, but nothing ever seemed to gain traction, like I said. So it's been unfortunate because it's a great piece of property that really could be something and that the village could enjoy, and it would add to what we have on a Parks and Rec scale. But so we're hoping we can get somewhere. I don't know if trading or selling the property is the right thing to do or not. But if we could absolutely improve that, we would love to do that with support.
Thank you. Councilor Waldman.
Yeah, I see it more as you suggest, as a almost a walking destination for people who live in the greater Sagebrush and beyond area. And also, if we can complete the bike route that's going to go down Sagebrush, be a nice stopping off point, you know, with shade and everything, you know, in the future. So I agree with you. Maybe the little itty bitties can go somewhere else, and we'll stick with the neighborhood feel. So thank you.
Ed, did you want to add anything?
Well, my own history with it is only goes back to when my daughter was one of the last people probably to have a soccer practice on it before a great flood. But one of the things I think that we have with this park is a unique opportunity to turn nothing into something. We've bantered this one around for a long time. I can use a lot of old adages about kicking the can down the road, but it'd be great to finally have a purpose for this area that represents what Corrales is about, and do something for the people in that area, because it would be a localized park. So I think just getting some sort of traction on it to go in a direction after 20 some odd years would be a preferred way of going.
Thank you. Are there any
Mayor,
other? I'm sorry, who is asking for my attention?
Lynn.
Oh, hi, Lynn.
Hello. So Tanya we've been texting, but she says she has something that shows we cannot sell it.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's
I'll get that from her. So
okay. Well, you know, sometimes there's an answer. So that just puts a little more urgency after 15, 20 years for us to find a use for this piece of property that will enhance the neighborhood. And with the new trail going in, it could be a really nice add. And as Councilor Waldman says, pretty low key. I don't think we are looking to do anything huge, but if I could direct Parks and Rec and Councilor Waldman, maybe continue and then maybe come back with some kind of an idea that the council can determine what direction we'd like to go. It's probably time. So I want to thank everybody for all their efforts. Do I have any more questions from councilors? Okay, I don't see anybody. So I just want to thank you so much for bringing everybody up to date on what you've all been trying to do over the years. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that I think both of these presentations just showed the amazing quality of volunteers that we have in town, and the work they do to try to help improve our lives. And as we go forward, you know, the Bosque Commission is also going to be giving a beautiful presentation, and thank you to all of you. It just makes a huge difference to the governing body to have all of your efforts and time. All right, Councilor, I think we're on to the village administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. The first thing I'd like to do is start off by turning it over to Tanya for a COVID update.
Hello, Council Ron. Thank you, Administrator Curry, Mayor and Council. All things COVID, as Ron puts it. Corrales itself has been doing amazing. We've only had 2 cases in 14 days, so thank you. The last case was on the 21st. However, Sandoval County itself is not doing as amazing. We are still listed on the modeling as a slight increase now. We were accelerating, then we were increasing. Now our wording is slight increase. The mobility in the metro region has also been very, very up in the last week of modeling, which is concerning because we do know the more we move and the more we travel, that's going to be a problem. Vaccination rates, let me pull that up. We're doing really good in Sandoval County. Again, with vaccinations, we have done a total of 69,064 vaccines, or people vaccinated, with 44,008 fully vaccinated. And the numbers are going to be a little different here, and they don't total, but it's okay. I'll explain why. With 70,149 with at least their first vaccine. We're still working on how we're putting vaccine 1 and vaccine 2 into the system with the J&J. And the other thing is we're pulling out some federal numbers, which are different than just the state numbers. Statewide, we have 653,802 with at least 1 vaccine. That's pretty good considering our vaccination population is about 1.6 million. And fully vaccinated, we have 396,667 people. Last Thursday, I got some numbers at the request of the mayor and the administration that we had 1,935 people in Corrales Phase 1A and Phase 1B Part 1 that had signed up for vaccine. We still had 731 people that had not received 1 vaccine yet. So I'm hoping we can get those numbers improved now that we've opened it up to wider. I don't want us to forget we still have Phase 1A and Phase 1B, which means over 75 or 16 and older with health issues. We are vaccinating close to 500 a week on Thursdays. We are doing homebound vaccines. We did a shift yet Monday again. We did 11 people. I did vaccinate 11 people with Amen. And we have another set for tomorrow to do another. I think I'm only doing 4 Corrales residents, so that's all that signed up or marked homebound. If you don't mark homebound in your registration, and I don't know you, you don't get pulled by the UNM group. I did receive, the other thing that's kind of scary on the modeling report is that our effective rate for the metro area is now going up, and it's at 0.1, 1.0. We want to be below 1. So that is increasing. The clerk asked me what I thought for going green tomorrow. I'm not, I don't think so. I'm just hoping we don't go back red in the metro area. And the other thing is the modeling and the epidemiology slides are looking at a 10% increase in cases with schools opening. Not necessarily from the school, but because the parents are then able to go out and work. So they're watching that very closely as well. Not trying to be a downer on all this, but just trying to get you guys the facts. And Sandoval's been maintaining 17, 12, 16, 14. However, on the 20th, we did have 29 cases. So we're still within the 5 days to where we see 5 to 7 days, how many cases those 29 are going to compute to into additional cases in the coming 7 days. And we got our approval. We will be a site. We'll be able to order our own vaccine, which is great because we're looking at doing some night and afternoon stuff for the people who work, working with Chief Martinez and all of the departments who are helping do this. And April 2nd, we're going to do a special site. The senior centers from Sandoval County have organized. We'll be vaccinating 500 people that day. I'll be happy to stand for questions or sit for questions.
Questions for Commander Latin? I think I speak for all of us, Commander. We're so appreciative of the tremendous job you're doing. Your head must be the size of a volley, a watermelon at this point, from all the people who write, and to tell you how much they appreciate your efforts. Thank you so much. And apparently we just have to stay the course, right?
Yes, ma'am. We are gonna get there though. Our numbers are gonna come down. We're gonna get more vaccine. We're gonna get everyone vaccinated. We're gonna get there. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling really optimistic.
Maybe if it's okay, you sent that text today about the trusted partner. Could you explain that to people? Because maybe some of the counselors and even people listening on this call could reach out to people that they think could encourage people to get vaccinated as people they trust.
So the federal and state level is trying to do a trusted partner program to get people who are known in a community or an area to do videos and get the information out that the vaccine is safe and that we need to be vaccinated and it wasn't rushed and that it's been tested. So I forwarded that to the mayor. I will be happy to forward it to anyone. I'm sure the clerk would be happy to forward it to anyone who's interested. There's a state site you go to. I think Corrales itself is doing really well. I haven't checked recently, but we had 5,094 people registered to be vaccinated, which is great with our population. But you may know people in other areas. Just because you live and work in Corrales, maybe you know people up in Jemez that aren't getting vaccinated, and you can do something for those areas to help people understand that we do need to get people vaccinated to get through this pandemic.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Murray.
Yeah, Commander Latin, could you send a video to my brother? Because he's in Oklahoma and he doesn't believe in vaccines at all. And I've been trying to get him convinced to go get them, but any help would be appreciated.
Councilor Murray, give them my phone number and have them call me. It's on 24/7 and I get phone calls 24/7. So I'll be happy to talk to him about vaccine.
Councilor Murray, would he consider you a trusted partner?
Apparently not.
Well, your influence only goes so far, or you can only twist his arm so long. So,
Councilor Burkett, did you have your hand up?
Counselor, you're muted.
Tanya, thank you for everything. I'm sure a lot of people saw the alert on their phones today that New Mexico now has the contact tracing app that you can download on your phone. I don't know what your level of familiarity is with that. If you could maybe give a brief description of what that does.
So I'm a lot of this is assumption. I got the alert. However, I've been vaccinating all day. If it works like the other ones I know about, as long as you turn on your location in that, and the other person has their location turned on, and then they go in, and I don't know if the state's going to manually put it in if you're positive or not. I've got to look into that. Or you put it in yourself and then it would alert people that your phone was in proximity with. And I truly believe we need this. The vaccination site in Corrales on Thursday, we had a person that showed up at the site, symptomatic, had tested and had been exposed to get vaccinated, and managed to, expose the person who was going to vaccinate him. And that person was not a village staff, but has not been vaccinated due to severe allergies. So that was really concerning to me that happened. So I'm hoping the state's going to do automatic entry. I do know we'll be able to opt out of it though. I do know they're not going to make it, I don't think any laws were passed to make it mandatory, but it'd be great to know if you're at Costco and within 10 feet of someone. But I'll be happy to look at it, and I can send an email to the clerk and he can send it out to you guys.
Good idea. I got it too. Anyone else? Any other counselors? Thank you very much, Commander Latin. Administrator Curry?
Thank you, Mayor. Next thing I wanted to mention is that you'll be receiving in the mail or via email or some sort of delivery system a survey that's being put out by the Planning and Zoning Commission, specifically looking at casitas. And they're going to use all of this information to see how people are feeling and then proceed forward and bring something back to, of course, the planning and zoning, and then eventually to the village council for some consideration. But the Planning and Zoning Commission is looking at this as a way to really gauge how the community's feeling. And there's going to be use, we think of the Survey Monkey program, and then maybe some other avenues of survey. But please look for this. Please respond. Please ask your neighbors and friends, constituents to respond. I think it will be very helpful as we move forward on the issue of casitas. And I know the Planning and Zoning Commission has put in a lot of effort along with Lori and her staff to make sure that this is a good thing. Next thing is that I wanted to mention that the first meeting of the steering committee on Chapter 18 will be held via Zoom at 4 p.m. on March 24th, which is tomorrow. We anticipate the first meeting will last an hour. It will be a meet and greet so the members can meet one another, learn about each other's background, and discuss the protocol for future meetings. The steering committee will be tasked to bring clarity and consistency to Chapter 18, and then present their collaborative work to their collaborative work product to the village council for their consideration and approval and approvals. The council is the final decision maker on these issues. Future meetings of the steering committee will last 2 hours and will be held twice monthly. We ask the steering committee's members to constructively participate in all the meetings along with completing the prep or homework. The public may observe via Zoom and will be able to offer input at specific times during the process. However, the steering committee's work sessions will be interactive with the members and the administrative staff. The village council will be updated at least once every month during the year-long process. The process for reviewing and editing Chapter 18 will be discussed at the first meeting and will be adjusted during the year-long work period to create the best efficiencies. The Village of Corrales and our partner, the Mid-Region Council of Governments, is grateful and is appreciative of all members of the steering committee for their time and efforts. So this process is going to start tomorrow. And like I said, it's going to be a meet and greet. Want people to observe and participate, but I want to emphasize that this is a working committee. So as members of the public sit and watch, we ask them to, if they have questions or comments, to pass them on to the members of the steering committee, or to myself, or to Maida Rubin, or anybody else that's on the administrative staff. And we will be coming and asking for specific comments on our work. But this is, like I said, it's going to be a clarification and looking for consistency on this. And so we're looking forward to it. And if this meeting has been posted for tomorrow afternoon, as all meetings will be posted. So if you want to sit and observe, we encourage that. And, like I said, this first meeting is a meet and greet. And so we're very excited about it, because it's nice to be exciting about something that is so darn dry. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be laying awake tonight going, boy, I'm looking forward to that Chapter 18 meeting discussion tomorrow. But the point is, it's very important, and we need people's input, and we're going to make sure that the council is updated, and that the public has the opportunity to get their licks in, if you will. Next thing I wanted to mention is that we talked briefly earlier about the Corrales Road and the crosswalks. We had a good meeting last week, and the continual subject of Corrales Road and whether the village should take it over has come up again. And so now we've asked the state of New Mexico to make a presentation to the council. They've been here before, but not to this council, We've asked him to make a presentation to the council on April 20th and provide to members of the council and to members of the community prior to their presentation some of the things that they'll be talking about versus the pros and cons of taking over Corrales Road for the village. We realize that this is a high-profile discussion item, and people have a lot of opinions. Some are old, some are new, some are fresh, and so we expect all those to come out. But one of the things that I'm thinking about, and I'm sure the mayor will comment one way or another on this, is that as we look at this, it's important. I think what we're going to hear from the state is that they've kind of reached a point in their window where they're trying to allocate monies for a process like this to take place. And one of the questions that we've asked them to bring forward to this body is that if this process begins to move forward, whether it's, you know, in December of this year or December of next year, we want to know the exact timeline for the disruptions, because we want to be as conscious of our businesses along Corrales Road that have gone through COVID, like we all have, but we don't want to start another process that cannot be specific timelines for our businesses. So we've asked them to do that. One of the things that they've also alluded to is trying to encumber the money. So if they've got X number of dollars to try to do this process, and again, these are all numbers that they'll have to color in for us at the meeting, is that we want to make sure that we know what those monies are and the timelines that will be associated with it. And that's key to us as we move forward, and key to you folks as you make the decisions as we go forward. So what else here? I also wanted to remind you all of the meeting on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, the appeals meeting that will be coming up. I don't know if Councilor Audio would want to address any of that, but there'll be an appeal coming from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the last thing that I want to bring up is that, as many of you know or don't know, the village is 50 years old this year, and some of us have that date behind us, some of us have that date in front of us, but it's 50 years old for the village of Corrales. And there's a lot of things in process that we're looking at, trying to ways to not only celebrate, but to put our arms around the village and highlight some of the things that the village is known for over the years, and how the village has grown, and how the village is still a family and a community that represents the best of New Mexico. So 50th birthday party coming your way soon. Mayor, I'll answer any questions I can.
I just wanted to mention, weigh in just slightly on the Corrales Road presentation. I mentioned to Dr. Jill Moser, who's our district engineer, that I wanted to make sure that there was a little time so the counselors could certainly get their questions in. She's pretty good on her feet, but if there are things, and I know there probably are, that each of you are concerned about, we can get those questions to her so that she can make the most full-throated presentation, persuasive or not, to the governing body. But I think it's important for everybody to take a little time to think about what they think are the most compelling opportunities or problems, challenges with this proposal from DOT. Councilor Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and Mr. Curry. Thank you for bringing that up tonight, because that was on my bucket list for tonight too. I have looked at Mr. Cogg's 2019 traffic count for Corrales, and it is apparent to me that the commercial core area through the south end of the village is the major backbone of all of our commercial activity. And this road's got to be done. Something's got to be done with the road. I mean, we can patch it only for so long before we need to update it and make it safe for bicyclists, pedestrians, and everybody else. So thank you for bringing that up tonight, and I look forward to the April meeting.
I hope so too. I think that's right. I think we have to really look carefully at this process. So anybody else we have our department reports, our board and commission reports, as always a wealth of information. Any of the counselors have questions for department heads? Counselor Knight, yes. And then I'll get to you, Counselor Murray.
Yeah, when I was reading through the Bosque Commission review of their notes, they did mention about whether they were going to restrict electric bikes in the Bosque. I just want to put a positive note on, I have an electric assist bike. It isn't always on electric. And I would hope that that the Bosque Commission doesn't ban electric assist bikes in the Bosque.
Thank you. Any other, I think Councilor Murray, you had a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is for Sandy Rasmussen, if she's present or not, for the pathways or the pedestrian access road or whatever they call it. Anyway, I'm just curious about, is that still viable? It looks like you're still waiting for funding, or they're still waiting for construction drawings. Are we making progress so we can get moving on that?
Sandy, are you with us? I don't see you. But I think Administrator Curry can address that issue for you.
Councilor Murray, the answer to that is yes. And I would say first and foremost that the board, now that Sandy's working with it, has been exceptional as far as digging into their work. And they very much want to get something done. They made that, they've made that very clear the last couple of meetings, and they've been pushing hard for the crosswalks and for safety reasons, and not just because of pathway reasons, but they feel like most of us do, is that there's a lot of liberation as far as making decisions for the village if we can make those decisions just based upon what our specifications are as far as the pathway would go within the village, without necessarily having to walk all the lines that the state would want us to walk. And so they're very much an advocate for that at this point. But they too have been pushing for us to do something, because the state has been literally trying to leverage any decision that we make on the pathway based upon the fact whether we take over the road or not.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions regarding any of the department or board and commission reports? All right, I don't see anyone, so I'm going to move on to the counselors forum, and that section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Councilor Murray.
Well, thank you. I was going to let Councilor Waldman go first.
Okay, well, that's very big of you, Councilor Murray. Thank you. Councilor Waldman.
I just wanted to bring to the attention of the council. A couple of weeks ago, I went out and met Alan Brower, who is with the Native American Community Academy. They have entered into a lease agreement on the Trucello Fields. This is not going to be through farmland preservation, but they have and they brought a number of the students from Naka, mainly Navajo, to the fields to take a look at it, and the water lines and everything. And I'd like to propose that we get a presentation from Alan on what they propose to do there. It's about 16 acres, 12 on the east side, another 4 on the west side. And I think it's going to be an absolutely terrific project once they can get it going. So I'd like to propose we put that on the agenda for the future.
That sounds terrific. And I don't absolutely want to put Councilor Lucero on the spot, but I'm wondering if he could discuss his involvement with the MTB. You know, we as a village are on various committees, and the Metropolitan Transport Board and the TCC and there's a lot of initials here, but actually our participation is very important. And I'd really wonder if Kevin Lucero could address that point.
Thank you, Mayor. Like the mayor said, these are some committees and some boards that I think that, Corrales, our predecessors, have fought very hard to get a seat at this table. And my particular board, we discuss divvying out money for roads and bridges and reclamations and a whole bunch of things. And it's very important that we have representation there on all the committees, the TCC and the TPTG committee. And I think those are very important committees to sit on. I know I'm sure Mr. Curry is very well aware of what seats we do hold on those committees and those boards. I've tried to be very diligent about attending those meetings, and I believe it's a very forward-moving committee to where it's good to make relationships on those boards. I'm hoping that in the future we will have a kind of a bigger, more robust say in what some of those where some of those funds, the state and federal funds for those type of operations are divvied up, i.e. in our little community here, sometimes we can find solutions to problems that we didn't even know we had. So I'm very proud to sit on that board. Those meetings can get quite long and quite discussion oriented, if you will. But I enjoy my time there. So like I said, I can't iterate enough how important it is to have the TCC committee staffed and the TPTG committee staffed, just for the mere fact that we may be available to benefit from those particular committees and boards in the future. So thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilor Murray, did you have something more that you wish to speak to?
Yeah, just a couple items. One, I'd like to have the council dust off the 2020 Water Advisory Board report that was given last January 2020. I think.
Oh, we lost you. Councilor Murray? I don't know who's frozen.
It looks like Councilor Murray is frozen.
All right. I think he's talking about the Water Advisory Board report. And I think that's an excellent idea. Are you back? No? Let's see. They were a short-term commission. They've sort of been disbanded, but perhaps we could ask them to come back. They did have some recommendations going forward. And I think that would dovetail with the work that the Planning and Zoning Commission has been doing on our water quality. We've got some issues we really need to address as a community. I don't think Councilor Murray is with us at the moment, so maybe we can come back. Is that right, Aaron? Is he offline right now?
Yeah, and I think the last time this happened for him, he joined via phone, so I'll be on the lookout for him.
Okay, that's great. We will look to update the Water Advisory Board report and see what recommendations we might want to move on and what coordination with Planning and Zoning. And then does anybody else have anything for the Counselors Forum? All right, then we're going to move on to the Corrales Forum. Is anybody signed up for that?
No, Madam Mayor. Chris Allen was going to speak, but she spoke during the
All right.
Equestrians.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Village Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. The one item is approval of the minutes for March 9th. Do I have a motion?
Mayor Rowe.
Yes, Councilor Parker.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, before we approve the minutes on it, I didn't see any indication that I was late to the meeting, and although I hate calling attention to that, I think it should be noted that I did not begin the meeting with everybody.
Thank you. At the moment, I'm calling for a motion and a second, and then we can do discussion and we can put your moment of shame into the minutes. So.
And Madam Mayor, it looks like Stuart has joined us via phone.
Oh, great. Okay. Maybe we could finish this item and then go back to have the other item that I think Councilor Murray was interested in.
I'll make a motion that we
Thank
approve.
you very much. And then we have a second.
Second.
Thank you very much. And I think we had discussion from Councilor Parker. Anyone else have anything that they would like to add? All right, so we could use that as a friendly amendment, and with that, could take a vote to approve these minutes. Councilor Lucero.
Aye.
Councilor Knight.
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Councilor Waldman.
Aye.
Councilor Murray.
Aye.
Councilor Burkett.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Councilor Murray, we did understand that you wanted us to get the Water Advisory Board report, and we will definitely do that.
Yeah, that was, yeah, because I think since the weather, like you say, the weather patterns are changing, we need to kind of take a look at that. And there was, when I was skimming over it, one of the recommendations I think was that the village might not have sufficient water rights for all the projects we're doing. So I think we ought to go take another look at it and see what we can do to meet those recommendations.
Okay.
And then also, the only other item I had, the recycling center that's been over at Cottonwood Mall is we're losing that March 24th. I guess that's tomorrow. Apparently the city of Albuquerque has decided to cut back on their recycling centers, and that I think it's the closest ones are going to be like Bloom Park and I think Taylor Ranch, at least from Corrales. The only reason I mention this is I used it because I had, glass recycling. I like to at least do my part and take the glass over and drop it off in their bins. So my question is there any way that we can get a bin maybe put in the village somewhere for glass recycling? I don't know if Roadrunner Waste does that or not, but I think it'd be worth pursuing to see if we could at least find a location for a glass recycling. It might be a little closer than Bloom Park or Taylor Ranch.
Thank you. We'll look into that and get some information for you at the next meeting. How's that?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
All right, I think we're now moving on to new business. And the first item under new business is consideration, action, and approval of Corrales Bosque Advisory Commission Management Guidelines. It's a mouthful. And I don't know, Joan, did you wish to speak to these guidelines before we go any further?
Well, I'll speak during my PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, give me just a moment to get that up on the screen.
Okay.
Anytime you're ready, Joan.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Well, good evening, Mayor, councilors, and villagers. I'm Joan Hashimoto, current chair of the Bosque Advisory Commission. I come before you tonight to ask council's approval of the Bosque Preserve Management Guidelines. Next, please. The 7-member Bosque Commission devoted portions of each meeting over the past year to this work. The straightforward guidelines have basis in the Bosque Ordinance and seem appropriate in light of changing climate and river dynamics. Next, please. 162 acres of fragile riparian habitat along our entire eastern border comprise our gem, the Bosque Preserve. It is owned by the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District and co-managed with Corrales. Next, please. Next, okay. In 1980, the village declared the Bosque a wildlife area by resolution. 10 years later, Council passed the Bosque Preserve Ordinance, declaring the mission to preserve and protect the bosque. Next, please. Riparian areas like our bosque make up a small fraction of New Mexico, but support most of our wildlife species. Some of the many animals seen in the bosque include an occasional white-tailed deer. Next, please. Porcupine. Next, please. Young great horned owls. Next, please. In the upper left is a wood duck pair near their cottonwood nest. In the upper right is a female wood duck with her ducklings. The lower left, a western tanager migrating through in spring. The lower right is a Swainson's hawk, which is a casual summer resident that fledged 2 chicks from a bosque nest last summer. Next, please. The upper left shows some sandhill cranes sleeping in the river during a snowstorm last month. The upper right is a hognose snake near the levee. The lower left is a turtle. And in the lower right, a fish in the Riverside Drain, AKA the Clear Ditch. This drain provides critical year-round water for many animals, and the vegetation growing along it provides vital food and cover, especially in winter. Next, please. Ravenna grass is one of our most problematic invasive species. It spreads by seed and quickly and grows tall and tough. Its seed heads can be clipped off in early September to prevent spread, but must be dug out and carried away to eradicate it. It's a fire threat. Next, please. Mechanical removal of Ravenna is best. The Rocky Mountain Youth Corps has worked at it twice under an Intel Main Street grant, as well as Fire Department Youth Conservation Corps crews. MRGCD paid for an ecologist and a botanist to educate these youths during the work days. Roadrunner Waste contributed dumpsters. There were community work days in spring to dig the plant out and in fall to cut seed heads. Next, please. Our Canopy Cottonwoods are reaching the end of their lifespan and are projected to die in the next 5 to 10 years. It's prudent to replant them when their roots can reach the water table and perhaps to consider other species. Next, please. We recognize that native plants do best in the bosque, and many were planted during the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers restoration projects of 2012 and 2015. They are the most utilized by bees, moths, birds, and other pollinators, and require far less water and no fertilizers to thrive. Next, please. This is the Animal and Plant Life Guidelines. Next, please. Hours open, the preserve rules and rules of the trail are shown here. The latest addition at 8 bosque entrances are the dog waste stations. These were added at the end of August and at current usage are on track to remove 24,000 dog poos per year from the bosque, which pollute the land and the water table. There are 2 non-bosque locations also. Next, please. At the upper left, we have Riverbank Lowering after many tons of dirt were removed during the Army Corps of Engineers restoration project in 2012 to allow the river to connect with the Bosque. In the upper right, willows are growing in a swale 1 year after planting. In the lower left, an excavated channel allows water to flow during wet years. At the lower right, willows grow in a channel when river levels are low. Next, please. An exceptional runoff year in 2019 when bank lowering efforts allowed the river to enter many parts of the Bosque. Next, please. The Environment and Pollution Guidelines. Next, please. Thank you. Fire is a constant threat to the Bosque. In 2012, 6 to 7 acres were burned in the Romero fire, while many more acres were burned on the Sandia side of the river. The upper right, the same area now with little growth in 9 years. At the lower left, a map indicates a shaded fuel break area. To help deal with possible wildfire, 6 shaded fuel breaks are spaced about every mile throughout the Bosque in narrow areas. These shaded fuel breaks allow canopy trees to remain, but the area beneath is kept open and more easily defensible. In the lower right, in an experimental project, goats were used to remove Ravenna and invasives and perform well, and we hope they'll return. Next, please. The fire and police guidelines. We rely on our public safety entities to patrol the preserve. Many people utilize the preserve for passive, slow-speed recreation on narrow, soft dirt paths. This has only increased during the pandemic. Whoop. Go ahead, Aaron. Thanks.
Sorry, no, I misclicked.
Oh, okay. Next, please. Next slide, please, Aaron. Okay. So, whoops.
Oh, sorry.
Could you go back one, Aaron? Oh. Could you go back one more, please? Great, thank you. So this shows many people enjoying the Bosque, and the Bosque was awarded an Audubon Important Bird Area designation in 2013 after local ornithologist Janet Roos submitted a detailed application. In 2020, Janet cited 165 bird species in Corrales. Next, please. Water and snow sports here when conditions allow. Next, please. Our trails here are truly multi-user. I took this photo one morning several years ago, showing bike tires, raccoon prints, black bear tracks, human footprints, and horseshoes. Next, please. And Snake says, me too. Next, please. Our recreation guideline. Research occurs in the Bosque. Hawks Aloft conducts raptor nest monitoring each spring and summer. UNM biology students do field studies. Next, please. Boy Scouts learn about nature and do Eagle projects. Several years ago, one project was to work with the fire department to put up river mile marker signs. Next, please. The Research and Education Guideline. Oh, okay. MRGCD funded a study about how the Rio Grande ecosystem was doing in 2015. In 2019 and 2020, many stakeholders again came together to discuss and develop conservation targets, and that process is ongoing. Next, please. Many have heard about the project between Nature Conservancy, SCAFCA, Corrales, Rio Rancho, and MRGCD to move the Rio Rancho effluent outfall and create a wetlands with that water and stormwater runoffs at the Harvey Jones Channel. Next, please. Interagency cooperation is paramount. This is our guideline for that. Next, please. Next, please. The Commission feels that these guidelines will be helpful in preserving the preserve. Please give your support. Thank you. Next, please. Are there any questions?
Do I see any I would like to say, Joan, it's a beautiful presentation. I hope you'll be able to, will you be able to upload it on the, have Aaron upload it on the web page for everybody?
Sure.
Are there questions?
And I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I forgot that not everyone was viewing it. And I should have read all the guidelines. I thought I would let people read them, but I wasn't realizing that so many people were just on the phone.
We do all of in our packet, in the public packet, everyone does have those guidelines. They are at pages 90 to 91, I believe, of the public packet. If people want to take a chance to look at those again. Do we have counselor questions for Joan on their projected guidelines that they would like us to approve tonight?
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray.
Yes, Councilor Murray. It's hard. I can't see your hand up, Councilor Murray.
I just want to thank Joan for a good presentation. I was following along on my computer, and so I didn't get out of sync. But yeah, one question I have is, I know you've mentioned in the past that our cottonwoods are getting old and dying off, and I'm just wondering, are we working with other agencies? I think you said we are, to come up with a plan for replanting with new trees.
Well, when the water table allows, pole planted cottonwoods will do well. But when the water table, when poles can't reach the water table, of course, they won't do well. So the question facing us is, do we want another species of tree in the bosque? And that seems to be what everyone's grappling with right now.
So
Now,
you
the
haven't come
Nature
to a consensus yet,
Conservancy,
then?
pardon me?
You haven't come to a consensus yet as to maybe what to be replanted with?
Right. Right. Now, Santa Ana Pueblo is planting some box elder maples. And we should probably go and take a look at how they're doing. And Nature Conservancy has come out with a list of trees that they think will do well for the next 100 years. And we should take a serious look at those. But no, there is no consensus as to what kind of tall canopy tree would do well for in the next 100 years.
Thank you. Councilor Waldman, did you have your hand up? Were you at something? No? Was there someone else who had a question? Yes, Councilor Burkett.
I just have a question more about the cottonwoods. How much of a change in the water table do we need, and for how many years would we need that change in the water table for cottonwoods to retake? And is it something we can reasonably think will happen, or should we be pursuing Plan B aggressively because we don't think we can meet the criteria for Plan A?
Well, we would need a lot of bank lowering projects. I think if you go to the river's edge at, say, up at the siphon or in many places, and look at how high you are, or even at Dixon Road, or where you can follow the riverbank, and look at where you are and look at where the river is. A lot of times you can see how there's no way those roots can be down in the water. And so we've got this big disconnect that even with a good spring runoff for the rest of the year, the roots wouldn't be down where they need to be. So we would need lots more Army Corps projects with them removing tons of dirt for us to have, and us planting right down near the, at the river's edge, for us to have good cottonwood growth.
Any other questions for Joan? I think I want to say that our fire chief is he attends these meetings. He's more or less the liaison. He works very closely with the Bosque Commission. Chief, is there anything you'd like to add? Hello?
Hi, Mayor, councilors. No, just it was a pleasure working, or we're still working with the Bosque Advisory Commission on trying to come up with the, strategies and, management plan. And I know they put a lot of effort into this. And I do join every one of their meetings, unless I'm on a call or something, but just to be that liaison and try to, assist them with some of the government needs that we do as far as the fire department and seek funds. As you're aware, we co-manage with the Bosque or the Middle Riverbank Conservancy District. So I'm always trying to find, local, state, federal funding sources to help us with some of these endeavors. I mean, just maintaining, I know the Army Corps of Engineers goes through and does projects, but then they do a handoff to us and we have to find the funding to continue that. So I'm looking forward to keep, brainstorming on options on how we can, not only reduce the fire danger, but to also find that balance and try to find a way to replant cottonwoods and whatever other choices we try to move forward with.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this item? All right, I would consider a motion to approve the Bosque Advisory Commission Management Guidelines.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
No.
No. Thank you. They are approved, and thank you very much for your work. The second item is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2107, authorizing adjustments of various funds for fiscal year 2020, 2021. Let me get to those. Do I have a motion on this item?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right, is there discussion on this item? Yes, Councilor Waldman.
Yes, on item number 1, create a revenue budget and fund for animal control vehicles. I think the discussion previously was that this was for animal control vehicles and equipment. I believe vehicles is being handled through the state ICIP. This would be a broader category, which would allow them to get materials they need to do their work, as opposed to limiting it just to the vehicles. So if there's an amendment that can be made there, Aaron, I think you and I discussed this before. I don't know whether.
So Councilor Waldman and Mayor and Council, this is the ICIP funds. These are all the capital appropriations we received. So we can't really do much amending. It is for vehicles and equipment. We can make an amendment to include the equipment, but I think just for the sake of this is just to make a revenue account specific for these funds. It doesn't.
And it's just an internal.
Correct. Yes, these are just this is an internal sort of make a fund number, so that we know exactly how much is in that account, and so that we don't run into an issue like we have in the past where we commingle a bunch of these funds and don't know where the funds are coming from or how much has been spent.
And these funds actually are last year's clawback funds. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. These are part of the ICIP capital appropriations from last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we have flexibility, perhaps not in the wording, but in the use of the funds.
Correct.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
It is a very good point Councilor Waldman raises. However, we always have to be extremely careful about the wording of our ICIP requests, because this is one thing the state is very particular about. And so if it's not there, they're not going to let you spend the money on it. So in this case, it is broad enough to cover it, but you always need to think about that as we put together ICIP lists. So are there any other questions about, I'm very happy to see this. this is going to, again, is a big improvement to our financial procedures. So this will make it a lot easier for Raina and all of us to track the monies of our ICIP allocations. So I believe we had a motion, and we had a first, and do we have a second? Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Knight. All right, I'm going to take, is there any more discussion? If not, I will take a vote. Councillor Parker?
Yes.
Councillor Knight?
Yes.
Councillor Lucero?
Aye.
Councillor Burkett?
Aye.
Councillor Murray?
Aye.
Councillor Waldman?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And just so you know, of course, although the budget has not yet been approved this year, we are right now, it looks very good for us getting a number of new monies this year for some more projects off of our list. And we can also discuss how hilarious it is in some ways that in spite of all the things we push, the legislators pick some other things that we're like, okay, it was on the list. Okay. So, you know, that's just sort of the quirkiness of the ICIP process. But all right, the next item on the agenda for discussion is cluster housing. Lori, are you here with us? Lori?
Yes, I am here. Yes.
I wonder if you could just give sort of a broad overview of sort of where you think this cluster housing is and what might be appropriate vehicle for really for consideration of this in the future.
Absolutely, Mayor, councilors. So right now, the village comprehensive plan calls for low density, 1 dwelling unit per acre in residential and commercial zones, 2 acres in the A2 zone. And our village ordinances reflect this. With regards to cluster housing, there was some discussion about limiting it to the commercial zone only. Currently in the commercial zone, there is a permissive use of 1 dwelling unit per lot, 1 single family dwelling unit per lot. There is a use by review, which would require going before the Planning and Zoning Commission of a group home having a maximum capacity and occupancy of no more than 8 patients or residences. So something such as a beehive home. So if the cluster housing concept were to be considered, it would be my recommendation. This would require overhauling village density in the comprehensive plan itself, as well as a need to really examine infrastructure requirements, such as increased traffic, and especially, you know, as we've been hearing lately, the impact on septic loads. The Planning and Zoning Commission has worked really hard and found a number of studies specifically calling out Corrales for groundwater pollution issues. And even though those studies are several years old, with our ever-growing population, I think we're going to find the 2020 census we've grown quite a bit. I don't imagine the potential groundwater contamination issue has improved any. So that was something that would be something that absolutely need to be addressed. But you know, my recommendation would be start with the comprehensive plan, because this is a major change to suggest to what's been a backbone of Corrales since day one, which is lower density.
Thank you very much. Councilors, do you have Councilor Knight?
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. When I brought this up a couple weeks ago, you know, I did say, can we look at it in the commercial zone? You know, I realize no one wants cluster housing in any rural area, but you know, I would like to share some thoughts. You know, I was reading over the minutes to the work studies from the Planning and Zoning on February 10th. And lots of discussion talked about wastewater, which I understand, you know, we have a sewer line or a wastewater line right now. But they talked about, if the village people want it, why aren't we, putting more emphasis on having a sewer and a wastewater line? I think we need to look ahead and not wait for disaster when all of a sudden, somebody's water is contaminated because of the septic systems. And I think, when I first got on the council, one of the CIPI requests was for another line off the major line that goes down Corrales Road, because there's no backup for this. If the line goes down on Corrales Road, we're sunk, because or and it's emergency. Michael has to go and fix it right away. And if he can't fix it right away, those people that are hooked onto that sewer line, they're in trouble, because there's no place else to go, because there's one way, it goes down Corrales Road and that's it. Okay, as I was saying, in this draft minutes, they talked about, maybe we need to address this a little bit more with the sewer line, because people are wanting to not necessarily expand casitas or whatever, but they talked about what struck me in this document was that the people on P&Z, the commissioners, were saying, we need to listen to the people of Corrales and see what they want. So with that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about our seniors in Corrales. We have an organization here called the VIV, Village in the Village, that has 145 members. And what it is, it's seniors helping seniors. And when you think about it, the average age of people here in Corrales is 55 years old. The seniors have voted for farmland preservation. They have voted for the rec center. They have voted for the sewer system. They have contributed money towards things that help everybody out. And I'm just feeling like, since Chapter 18 is going to be looked at, the comprehensive plan is going to be looked at, why can't we think about having in the commercial zone that would tie into the sewer system, something for some seniors, so they don't have to leave Corrales when they get too old enough to not be able to work on their whole acre. So that's my main concern. And I think, again, I think we need to think about that as what people want in the village. And again, I'm not saying that this is going to be, like, I read I read all of Councillor Murray's thoughts. And to me, I didn't know if he was for or against by some of the things he said on this discussion paper. But I think we need to look at it. Why not do something new and big for people who have supported our village for all these years? So that's my spiel.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Councillor Parker?
Mayor Roque, councilors, I think that some of the topics that Councillor Knight was speaking about has real merit in the village, in terms of the population as they get older, not wanting to maintain their acre, still wanting to have that rural lifestyle that we're so fond of in the village. We also have a really big movement for farmland preservation. And it just seems to me that if you looked at cluster housing in combination with the farmland preservation, there seems to be like a win-win situation where maybe you have 10 acres of farmland, that it's not financially viable to have that become part of the farmland conservation easements completely on there. But if you combine that with some cluster housing and allowed people to develop that land with single family homes in a more dense area, that maybe each house has 1/4 of an acre, but they're all in relative close proximity to each other, you could maintain that farmland preservation. You could provide the opportunity for people to live closer to their neighbors so people can keep an eye on each other, or maybe just the upkeep is is substantially less on there. And many years ago, I heard a discussion about the value of people aging in place in communities like this, where they're surrounded by farmland, where they're surrounded by the animals on there, and just the benefits of that to help treat some of the things that we all have to deal with as we get on with our lives. But it seems to me that there's a real possibility to do something pretty special here in Corrales, and not just look at it as, you know, a bunch of townhouses on Corrales Road. Like, I think we could really incorporate something with the feeling of what we want Corrales to be. So I'll get off my soapbox now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Councilor Murray, did you want to weigh in? I'm sorry, Councilor Burkett, go ahead.
Just very briefly, as much as I like voting on moving things from one account to the next, tonight's conversations have been a very pleasant surprise, and this is why I wanted to become a village councilor. And we're talking about Corrales Road, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about multi-generational housing, we're talking about fences, preservation. I'm very excited, pleasantly surprised with the direction today's meeting is taking, because these are all conversations, whether we move on them or not, that need to be had. So I appreciate Councilor Knight for bringing this up, and Councilor Parker for bringing stuff up. It's been a very pleasant meeting so far. And that's nothing other than a commentary. Sorry.
That's all right. I think it's good. We're kind of cooking with gas here, as we like to say. Anyone else want to weigh in on this? Is only a discussion item tonight? Yes, Councilor Waldman.
Yes, Councilor Knight mentioned a couple of weeks ago how much she appreciated what Councilor Murray had done in putting some of these thoughts together on paper. And I'm wondering if, since there's nothing imminent, for example, when we talk about walls and fences, there may be some problems with housing that's going up now. If Councilor Murray would be comfortable refining this and sending this on for the Chapter 18 discussion that Mr. Cog is doing, and maybe that is a starting point for discussion later on.
Councilor Waldman, I just want to interject here, because I want us to remember that the Chapter 18 is really a clarification of our current code. It's kind of a cleanup. This would likely be a policy change. And so I'm not sure that's really within their purview. I want to make sure that we're not kind of getting apples and oranges here. I think it's really important to think about, but the Chapter 18 people are really looking at administrative cleanup, clarification, but they're not seeking to change big policy. That's unless we as a body direct them to do so, but I think that's outside the scope of the Chapter 18 review.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray.
Yes, hi, Councilor Murray.
So the reason I threw those things up, it was just to get a conversation going, but my gut feeling is that if we want this village to retain the character and the look and feel of where it's at right now, if we go to higher density, regardless of how we do it, we're going to destroy that character, because we will be at some point putting these higher density homes into smaller areas where we may not have the groundwater to support them. Some of the things about traffic, we got to look at that. Plus, I think there are other issues at play here that really may restrict cluster housing. I'm more worried also about the impact of short-term rentals and assisted living facilities being able to now make inroads into the village if we provide higher densities. The casitas obviously is another tricky area where the Planning and Zoning Commission is working on it right now. But the reason I threw up these thoughts was, is this something that we really want? Is this what the village wants to do? Because I ran on keeping the current density at 1 and 2 acre minimums. And I'm afraid that the cluster housing, even if we restricted it to the commercial area, it's opening up a whole can of worms that's going to come back and plague us later on. So that was my main thoughts about throwing this up and asking for a discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Any final thoughts on the cluster housing? All right, thank you for the discussion, everybody. We're going to move on to old business. The first item is discussion and direction from the council on fences and walls. As you recall, we promised last time and the clerk delivered that there'd be an executive summary and some possible directions. So if you look at the fences and walls in the packet, I think it's 131. There's kind of a few examples of what we could do tonight. Direct planning and zoning to do a study, direct planning and zoning to draft an ordinance change, have a work study, or ask the Chapter 18 steering committee to address possible ordinance changes in their review. Because Councilor Burkett kind of took the lead on this, I'm going to ask him to speak to the item.
I appreciate it, Mayor. So yeah, I think it is great that we have options. From my perspective, we really have kind of three things we need to look at: the what we want to do, the where we want to do it, and how soon does it need to be done. I'll talk to the first one first, or the last one first. I would be very strongly against doing any sort of moratorium or something that really exacerbates this to a level it probably doesn't deserve. So I think looking at ordinance changes would be, in my opinion, a great way to go. I think we have some ordinances in neighboring communities that would really form a nice template or backbone for our ordinances. It would make that a somewhat easy process. At least that's my hope. We need to be careful that we don't find ourselves in the same spot we found ourselves 10 years ago, though, to where it doesn't matter what we decide to do, that our vaguity in what we're doing and where we're doing it causes problems. So I would suggest that we look at the scenic byway, which is Corrales Road. I would also suggest we look at historic districts. I think those are the two things that probably require the most attention on this. And again, I think there's some policies out there in place that we could build off of as far as what we want to do, just to preserve the views, preserve people's ability to see the agriculture, the history, all the stuff that really makes this village special. That's my initial thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councilor Burkett. So I think Councilor Burkett is suggesting that the council look at an ordinance, creation of an ordinance that would apply to the scenic byway and the historic district, and would kind of look like the Los Ranchos ordinance, which is also in the in your packet of materials. I think it is at. Sorry, I'm going to try and find it down here. It's not a terribly long thing. It's on page 149. And so could we have some discussion on that? How does the anybody want to speak to that?
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray.
I'm sorry, Councilor Lucero beat you to it, but we'll get to it, Councilor Murray, I promise.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief, and you know, although I support setting standards for fences and walls in this community, you know, because I believe it's important, you know, to support our scenic byways, like Councilor Burkett said. Our scenic byways are and why we, you know, the beauty of Corrales that we all come to enjoy. I believe that probably one of the major sticking points, and I think that it's important that when we do address an ordinance referring to these issues, is that we have to come to that balance, right? We have to come to that balance to, you know, the expectancy of privacy that people can have, and protecting those views and the beauty that we all talk about. I think that's a very important aspect. And I'm gonna say this, and you're probably gonna hear it probably 10,000 more times in the next year or so, is that the decisions we make, you know, in the coming months, you know, are gonna probably form Corrales in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What we want that to look like, right? What we want to preserve for future generations and the like. So I think it's very important that you know, we're very cognizant of that, and moving forward, we always take that into consideration. We have a lot on our plate, right? We have a lot on our plate with the Chapter 18, with casitas, with cluster housing discussions. I think it's very important that we think about, you know, what we want Corrales to look like 5, 10, 15, 25 years from now, and come to that balance as far as you know, people that live here and people that come here. I think preserving that byway, the scenic byways in our historical districts, in Corrales Road, I think it helps you know, develop Corrales as far as you know, with tourism and footsteps in Corrales. But on the same token, we have to be very cognizant of people's privacy. I think we can meet that balance, and I'm looking forward to hearing the discussions to that. So
Thank you. Councilor Murray?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was wanting to ask Councilor Burkett how he thought about Loma Larga, because one of the pleasant things about it driving through Los Ranchos on Rio Grande Boulevard is the views and the vistas that you have on both sides of the road, you know, regardless. I was wondering if you might consider including Loma Larga as part of this. And if the other part I have is, if you ever go up north by Comedinas in that area by the tree farm, if you want to see a poster child of not how to build a wall, I think drive in through there, and I think that first home that you run across is like a fortress. So I would go for preserving, you know, our views and vistas where we can, but not have a fortress of solitude built, you know, along the road.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Councilor Burkett, did you have something you'd like to?
As far as Loma Larga, I mean, so there's a couple things with Loma Larga specifically, the margins on the side of the road and the elevation of the road. I mean, I don't see it directly as a big of an issue, but I more broadly worry that it opens up a can of worms, that we don't have a specific designation from a zoning standpoint or from a scenic byway standpoint to include it and then not include other roads. So it would make me a little bit nervous unless we had some sort of threshold for minimum amount of traffic or something, that once we go outside of scenic byway and historic district, that we open up what does qualify and what doesn't. And that makes this conversation a lot harder.
Thank you, Councilor.
So,
Councilor Parker, Councilor Parker?
Mayor Rowe, councilors, I agree with Councilor Burkett on this, that we already have somewhat of a precedent in terms of the historic district dictating architectural styles and materiality on there. And then as well as the scenic byway, it has a specific special designation within our community. And also as far as the Loma Larga goes, I look at Loma Larga as something I would want to kind of protect my yard from, because of the volume of traffic and the speed of that traffic being, although we patrol that just as much as everything else, that's the fast way out of Corrales versus Corrales Road. And I think we can all agree to that. Please don't tell the police department I just said that out loud. Anyway.
I'm sure he's not listening. No problem.
So it's I think that as far as the rural aspect of trying to preserve something, we already have something in place with the scenic byways and the historic district on there. And then going beyond that, it is opening up the can of worms of like, well, what about 1 block from that area? Well, how about 2 blocks from that area? And then I think it becomes a more of a can of worms, so to speak. Thank you.
Are there other councilors that we've not heard from yet who would like to discuss? Yes, Councilor Knight. I think you just muted yourself. My
God. Okay. So, you know, I drive Loma Larga a lot because I live on the west side, and there is definitely a difference between elevation on between Loma Larga and then looking east. And even though there's some walls that have already been built, you can still kind of see over them because the elevation of Loma Larga is higher than the east side of that road when you go down to the ditch. So I agree that I think Corrales Road and our historical areas are the prime areas we need to look at as far as restricting walls and things like that.
Thank you, Councilor Knight. I wonder if I could ask Lori Stout, if she's still on here, to sort of address Councilor Lucero's concern about balance in terms of the Los Ranchos ordinance, which I really think we sort of looked at as a potential model. And they are somewhat similar, of course, to us as a community with wanting to preserve views, but allow people some privacy.
Yes, Mayor. I'm sorry, though. Could you repeat the question?
I think Councilor Lucero just wants to make sure that whatever we do kind of has a balance between view versus privacy, and also maybe where it's designated. And I was wondering if you think the Los Ranchos ordinance that we're looking at strikes that balance, or how Tiffany and the other planners in Los Ranchos feel that that ordinance has been effective or not effective.
Oh, sure. Mayor, councilors, what the Los Ranchos ordinance does is allow people, you know, a modicum of privacy. You've got your wall to a certain extent, but then you have sort of an open pattern at the top. There's also setbacks that we could look at for a front fence. That would be another option, but it allows people to keep their animals in or keep animals out, as the case may be, and still have some privacy and allow, you know, like one of the counselors mentioned, when you drive down Rio Grande Boulevard, it is a delightful experience. You can see the farmland, you can see the large lots, the architecture, and Corrales Road is a scenic byway. So that, you know, looking at this is certainly appropriate, and I think it balances the rights of the property owners with just the overall feel that we want to keep here in Corrales.
Thank you very much. Thank you. At this point, it's a discussion and direction. I can sort of see things coalescing around targeting a couple of areas in town. I'm not going to use that word. I'm going to take that word back, but focusing on the scenic byway and historic area to start with, and maybe looking at creating an ordinance that has Los Ranchos as a model to continue to keep kind of a balance. And the administration can certainly work on that. If there's no more on that, we can move to item 2, which is, as we noticed, the final item under old business. Apparently, we made a ministerial error last week, which we need to correct. Aaron, would you like to explain what we did?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, basically during this, we sort of hopped straight into a discussion revolving around meetings and kind of neglected to get a motion in a second before voting. So this would just be to get a motion in a second and kind of just reaffirm the fact that we're approving this resolution.
Okay, I'm perfectly willing to do that. I would take a motion for the extension of the declaration of emergency due to COVID-19. And I would, all right, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you very much. So let's take a vote on that. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Thank you very much. I think we will be looking for future agenda items as from the council, as I understand it, to see if we could get a presentation from Alan and the Nocta people on the farmland. And if we don't have that contact information, we'll contact you or farmland to get that. We'll also we'll do something, whether it's an agenda item or part of an administrator's report on the Water Advisory Board and where we're going with that. Do I have other items for from the council for upcoming meeting items? Well, don't worry, we'll have plenty. I don't want anybody to feel that we won't. Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, thank you. We're out of here. Thank you very much. Good night.